Good afternoon, ma'am. I would like to quickly introduce myself. I'm Yashfeen Ansari, a second year student from Communicative English. Today I will be sharing my presentation which topic is important to others. My topic name is Protected Areas of India with a specific reference to community reserve. Right to all activities like hunting, grazing, etc. in reserve forest are banned unless specific orders are issued otherwise in protected areas. Right to activities like hunting, grazing are sometimes given to communities living on the fringes of the forest who sustain their livelihood from forest resource or product. Reserved forests are often upgraded to the status of wildlife sanctuaries, which in turn may be upgraded to status or national park, with each category receiving a higher degree of protection and government funding. So let's discuss about what are protected areas. Protected areas are those in which human occupation or at least the exploitation of resources is limited. The definition that has been widely accepted across the regional or global framework that has been provided by the International Union for Conservation of Nature in its categorization guidelines for protected areas. There are several kinds of protected areas which vary by level of protection depending on the enabling laws of each country. Or the regulation of the international organization involved. The term protected areas also include marine protected areas, the boundaries of which will include some areas of ocean, and transboundary protected areas that overlap multiple countries, which remove the border inside the area for the conservation and economic purpose. The third slide is what percentage of India do parks cover? There are 870 notified parks covering an area of 1,65,158.54 square kilometer or 5.2% of India's land area. The geographical area of India is 32,87,263 square kilometer. Within it are 870 notified parks as on September 2019, covering an area of 1,65,158.54 square kilometer of 5.2% of India's land area. The breakups are as follows: 10 national park areas in the area 40,501.13 square kilometer or 1.23%. 551 sanctuaries areas are in 1,19,775.80 square kilometer or 3.64%. So 655 national park and sanctuaries comprising an area of 1,60,275.93 square kilometer or 4.87% of India's geographical area. In addition, there are 88 conservation reserve area, 4,356.49 square kilometer or 0.13%, 127 community reserves area, 525.22 square kilometers or 0.02%. Types of protected areas in India. India has a following kind of protected area in the sense of the world designation by IUCN. First is national park, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserve, reserved and protected forest, conservation for reserved and community reserved, private protected areas, conservation areas. India is one of the 7 mega diverse country of the world, with only 2.4% of the world's land area, 16.7% of the world's human population, and 18% livestock. It contributes about 8% of the known global biodiversity. That's put tremendous responsibility on the state of conserve this depleting biodiversity. Accordingly, the union and the state government have formed institutional framework and bodies to coordinate and conserve the natural heritage. Forest and wildlife in Constitution of India. The Indian Constitution entails the subject of the forest and wildlife in the concurrent list. Consequently, the Union Government act as a guiding force dealing with the policies and planning on wildlife conservation. While the state forest department are vested with the responsibilities of implementation of the national policies and plans. National Park in India. So, India's first national park was established in 1936 as Halle National Park, now known as Jim Corporate National Park. Definition: an area, whether within a sanctuary or not, can be notified by the state government to be constituted as a national park by a reason of ecological, faunal and floral, geomorphical or zoological associations or importance needed for the purpose of protecting, propagating or developing wildlife therein or its environment. There are 104 national parks in India, covering an area of 40,501.13 square kilometers, about 1.23 of geographical area of the country. Wildlife sanctuaries in India. Wildlife sanctuaries is an area comprised within any reserved forest or the theoretical water which is of adequate ecological, faunal, floral, geomorphical, natural or zoological significance. The sanctuary is declared for the purpose of protecting, propagating or developing wildlife or its environment. India has extensive network of 551 wildlife sanctuaries covering approximately 3.64% of total geographical area of the country. Conservation reserve in India. Conservation reserves can be declared by the state government in any area owned by the government, particularly the areas adjacent of national park and sanctuaries, and those areas which link one protected areas with another. Such declaration should be made after having consultation with the local communities. Conservation reserves are declared for the purpose of protecting landscape, seascape, flora and fauna and their habitat. The right of the people living inside a conservation reserve are not affected. Community reserved in India. Community reserve can be declared by the state government in any private or community land not comprised within a national park, sanctuary or conservation reserve where an individual or a community has volunteered to conserve wildlife and its habitat. Community reserved and declared for the purpose of protecting fauna, flora and traditional or cultural conservation values and practices. As in the case of the conservation reserve, the rights of the people living inside a community reserve are not affected. There is a difference between national park and wildlife sanctuary. In the national park, no human activities are allowed, can include flora, fauna or any other object of historical significance. Boundaries are fixed and defined, not usually open to the public. National parks are formed by the state or central legislature. A national park cannot be downgraded to a sanctuary, but On the other side, wildlife sanctuaries, human activities are allowed. Main aims is to protect a particular flora and fauna. There are no fixed boundaries. It is open to the general public. Sanctuaries are usually formed by the order of the center of the state government. Wildlife sanctuaries can be upgraded to a national park. So let's moving to the next section of the slide. Protected areas of India. So let's get it started. Protected areas network in India. As of July 2019, India has 870 protected areas across the country. The protected areas network of India covers 5.02% of the total geographical area of the country. These protected area from the part of the forest cover, which is 21.54% of the geographical area. So National Park NPS in numbers 103, total area covers 40,500.13 kilometer per square, and its percentage is 1.23%. Wildlife sanctuaries is number of 537 and 1,18,000 5.33 kilometer per square, 3.59%. Conservation reserve CRS 67 in India, which is in kilometer, 2,349.38 square kilometer, and in percentage it's 0.07%. Community reserves is 26 and it cover area 46.93 kilometer per square, which is an estimate of 0.001%. Protected areas PS in number of 733, which covers 1,60,901.77, which is an estimate of percentage 4.89%. The third point was bioreserves in India. Biosphere reserves protected larger areas of the natural habitat, often including one or more national park or sanctuary, along with the buffer zone that are open to some economic uses. Protected area protection is granted not only to the flora and fauna of the protected region, but also the human activities who inhabited these regions are their ways of life. The Indian government has established 18 biospheres in India. 11 of the 18 biospheres are the part of the world network of biosphere reserve based on the UNESCO Man of the Biosphere MAB program to promote sustainable development. This program was initiated by UNESCO in 1971. Tiger reserve in India. In 1973, the government of the India initiated Project Tiger for conserving its national animal, the tiger. Consequently, the tiger reserve was established, working on a core buffer strategy. The core areas have the legal status of the national park of a sanctuary, where the buffers of peripheral areas are a mix of forest and non-forest land managed as a multiple use area. There are 50 reserved tiger in India, which are governed by the Project Tiger, which is administered by the National Tiger Conservation Authority. So moving to the another slide, which is on community reserved area. I'm sorry. Conservation reserves and community reserves in India are terms denoting protected areas of India, which typically act as buffer zone to contractor and migration coordinator between established national park, wildlife sanctuaries, and reserved and protected forests of the India. Such areas are designated as conservation areas if they are inhabited and completely owned by the government of India, but used for the subsistence by communities and community area. If part of the land are privately owned, administration of such reserve would be through local people and local agency like the Gram Panchayat, as in the case of communal forest. I would like to look at our own next topic of the slide. History of the community reservation of the protected areas in India. Community reserve are the first instance of the private land being accorded protection under the Indian legislature. It opened up the possibility of communally owned for-profit wildlife resort and also caused privately held areas under non-profit organization like land trust to being protection. These protected areas categories were firstly introduced in the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act of 2002. The amendment of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, these categories were added because of the reduced protection in and around the existing or purpose protected areas due to the private ownerships of land and land use. A case in point was the Melghat Tiger Reserve, where the large area was left unprotected due to the private ownership. That's lead me to the next topic. Community reserved cities. Tirupparai Marathur Conservation Reserve near Tirunelveli district of Tamil Nadu, declared in 2005, is the first conservation reserve in the country. In 2012, Rajasthan government in India declared Javai Bandh Forest as a conservation reserve forest. Javai Bandh Forest is situated in the Pali district and it is in close proximity of Kumbhalghar Sanctuary, Kishorpur, Gurdeshpur, Punjab. Conservation Reserve, India's first community reserve. Recently, Gogabeel and Ox-Bow Lake in Bihar, Katihar district has been declared as the state's first community reserve. In 2020, the Indian government created the world's first sea cucumber reserve in Lakshadweep. K.K. Mohammed Koya Sea Cucumber Conservation Reserve, the largest marine conservation reserve. Atakoya Tanghal Marine Conservation Reserve, and the first protected area of marine bird in India, PM Syed Marine Bird Conservation Reserve. Last but not the least, we have tables of the name of the state and union territories, state areas, kilometer per square, name of the community reserved area, kilometer per square, a percentage of the state area. Okay. So there are 163 existing community reserved in India, covering an area of 833.34 kilometers per square, which is 0.03% of the geographical area of the country. National Wildlife Database March in 2020. State in Karnataka, 1,91,791 kilometer per square, and it's a one reserve community which is in area 3.12 kilometer per square, and in the percentage of 0.002%. In Kerala, 3,88,633 kilometer per square, one community reserve, 1.50 kilometer per square, 0.004 percentage of the state area. I'm sorry. Meghalaya in Meghalaya, 22,429 kilometer per square, 65 reserve community in it. 136.97 kilometer per square, and in the ratio of percentage, 0.6110% of the state area. Nagaland 16,579 kilometer per square, 93 number of the community reserve, 662.73 kilometers in area, and in the percentage of 3.997% of the state area. In Punjab, 50,362 kilometer per hour per kilometer, I'm sorry. Number 3 community reserve, 29.02 area per kilometer square, and in the percentage of 0.058%, and it sum up total 163 community reserved, as I had discussed before, and in area kilometer 833.34 kilometer per square, and in the percentage of 0.03%. To sum up with, I'm going to end my presentation. I hope it will reach your expectation. Thank you. Have a nice day.